Hello again. Good morning, afternoon, whatever. Not legal advice. Please like, subscribe, share. I did a live stream earlier talking about GTII. This one's going to be a little bit about finger motion for whatever it's worth. Again, greetings this morning to wherever you are, whenever you see this. It may not be morning, but hello to Mr. StreamYard, to John, Born Free Films, the 1-1, Jack, Rondell, and whoever else is around, and whoever else might join this or look at it later. Greetings. I hope everybody's well. So again, clearly this is not financial or legal advice. Hi, Lee. What this is just my thoughts. Hi, Scott. This is my thoughts on something that I saw. Maybe nothing, maybe worthless, but I wanted to just throw it out there, and then whoever's interested could follow up on it if they so choose. Hi, Andy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Fingermotion. I don't own Fingermotion, although I've previously owned Fingermotion. FNGR, I believe, is the ticker symbol. I have owned it, but don't currently. So this is just my thoughts, and you could do with it as you choose. Might be worthless, but we shall see. So before we get started talking about what I wanted to reference about finger motion per se, just wanted to reference a couple of things. Do you know what geographic area disrespects baked goods the most? You don't know? Oh, the answer is Doha. As a matter of fact, I was hungry last night. I was walking by the fridge in the middle of night. You know how tough that is sometimes. And I thought, it was quiet, but I thought I literally heard two onions in the refrigerator singing a Bee Gees song. When I opened the refrigerator door quickly, however, it was just two jives talking. And last but not least, all this stuff that happened in Iran last week, and I heard the U.S. struck Fordo, and I was wondering what happened with Bilbo Baggins. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about finger motion. So I owned finger motion before, kind of watched it and followed it, obviously. I know, no, I don't know. I don't personally know anybody. Haven't met anybody in management. I understand that Martin Chen is the CEO. Seems like a nice, honest gentleman. I think he's a little understated for my likings. That's one of the reasons why I left. Seems like more, just my view, for whatever it's worth, not worth a lot, but seemed more like a CFO type as opposed to a CEO type. Didn't particularly, it was hard for me to get enthusiastic with that type of demeanor, but so be it. It's all style. Seems like a smart guy, and again, seems like an honest guy and a nice guy. So I don't know him, so I will leave that as such. But what I did notice was either yesterday or the day before, I saw that a gentleman by the name of Taryn Pizer, who I thought was a shareholder of Fingermotion, some news came down, and what this gentleman, Mr. Pizer, and I don't know him, and I don't know the facts. I don't know his side of the story. I don't know what's true, but I kind of read about it, and the reason that caught my attention is he was sentenced to 42 months in prison in order to repay, I think, $17.9 million. I think about $12.5 million was like claimed to be ill-gotten gains, and a fine of like, say, $5.5 million. I think if you add those up, maybe that's $17.9 million. Anyway, he apparently owned this company, and he set up and it was I think, healthcare related company, and he set up a 10b5 stock plan, which means that you basically set up a stock plan when to sell shares on designated dates. And executives kind of do this. They might set it, I don't remember what the maximum length was, but let's say you could set it up for 18 months. You could set it up, and on the 5th day of every month, it might sell 10,000 shares. And I'm just making up numbers. And executives set those stock plans up so that they could sell without being accused of, selling with insider information. So it permits them an opportunity to sell their stock without having to worry about getting, charged with some securities violations. So it's commonly used. And apparently, Mr. Pizer, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He had one of these. He set it up in one of his companies. And he was charged. He was charged with a crime. So he was charged with securities violations, think insider trading and other violations. And even though it was a scheduled stock plan, and even though this was the first time that a scheduled stock plan had been challenged. And I think the argument of the government was, because he was criminally indicted. I think it was also a civil action too. But the argument of the government was, this is a healthcare company. He apparently had 2 big clients, and let's say the first client is Aetna. So Aetna leaves, it really impacts the value of the company, and then the second client's going to leave, and apparently there's a bunch of because I haven't seen any of this stuff, so I'm just saying what I read. Apparently there's a bunch of emails expressing concern about the business, and then the stock plan is set up, and then somebody else leaves. The value of the company, I think it went in February of 2021, it was something like $85.21 a share. And by July of 2022 to the current, and the name of the company, by the way, is On Track, I believe, ONTRACK Inc. I think that's it. So the company went from $85.21 a share to $1 a share in about a year. And I think that's where it's trading to this point in time. Anyway, the government basically said you kind of knew that the company was going to lose the business. You set up the plan after that to kind of make it look like it was legit. And they went after him. He was convicted. And this week he was sentenced. I think it was this week. He was sentenced to 42 months in prison and to pay that money. So I'll get back to that. And I think they indicated, or I saw some estimated his wealth at, like, say, 18 million or something like that, because he lost a lot when one of his clients left. And this is based on financial. I don't know if that's a realistic value of his net worth, but I'll get back to that conviction in a second, because it's going to be important. It's really the only point I'm making here, besides just talking about what went on. So I went and kind of looked at his history, and I don't know if it's his fault, or I don't think it's true. And he's looks like he's a very entrepreneurial guy, and he's from the West Coast, I believe, originally. And I asked somebody I know about him, and didn't give me a glowing review of his reputation, but he's been involved in a lot of small companies, and for whatever reason, a lot of them were healthcare or related, and looked like a lot of those companies didn't do particularly well. I don't know if that was him, or he got in after the fact, or he tried to help. I don't know, but there seemed to be a correlation, at least with a lot of companies that didn't do particularly well. And then he was involved in the junk bond business with Michael Milken at Drexel Burnham. And apparently in 1990, he testified against Milken, and that's why Michael Milken got convicted of securities violations. Milken went to prison, I think, for 2 years. Milken has since then kind of reformed his act, and apparently is very charitable, gives away a lot of money. But apparently Taryn Pizer is the one who testified against him, and I guess in large part conviction was based upon his testimony. So he testified, and got Milken convicted, and his testimony, apparently in return, he got immunity for securities violations and sanctions. So whether he would have been convicted or not or charged, I don't know, but it seems like that's what he exchanged for the testimony. Then I noticed that, and I don't know what his involvement was or if it was, but I saw a bunch of I saw a bunch of references that he was somehow connected. I don't know what the connection is because it didn't say. And maybe he just was an investor or maybe he was a client. I don't know, but of a company called Towers Financial Corp. And Tower Financial Corp was a debt collection company based upon New York that was founded by Steve Hoffenberg. That was apparently a Ponzi scheme. And I've seen references to Piser's somehow, and it hasn't been clear to me what it was. Again, whether it's a client, whether he bought stock, whether he loaned money, what it was, but I've seen him referenced as to this company that was the company was a Ponzi scheme. Again, I have no idea if he had any involvement with any of that stuff, so I'm not accusing him of anything. He may be an innocent gentleman, but along with the fact that he testified, he got immunity, then he was involved or had connections to a bunch of companies that didn't do great. At least it appears that way. He may have done well, but the companies didn't seem to do well. I don't know. And then we have this reference to Towers Financial Corp that apparently was a Ponzi scheme. Oh yeah, by the way, I should reference. So I don't know what his connection. Maybe what I've read is incorrect. Also, I ask that you all do your own research. But besides Hoffenberg, who apparently was running the Ponzi scheme, one of his workers at this company was Jeffrey Epstein. The famous Jeffrey Epstein worked for Hoffenberg in promoting this company. So does that concern me? So we have the immunity and with Milken, then we have a bunch of companies that don't seem to do well. Then we have this Ponzi scheme. Then, and again, I don't know what if any involvement he had. So I'm not accusing him of anything. Just it's interesting that it's a company that didn't engage in great behavior. So we have interesting people here. So that brings us to the current time. So what's my concern about this? The government has a judgment against him. He has 4 million shares. That's why the way I read it. That's about 8% of the company, or more than 8% of the company. So would I like the CEO to kind of clarify that this gentleman doesn't have control over the company? I think that would be a good place to start. And then the second part would be if, in fact, the government has a judgment or some order of restitution, will they be able to force him to sell those shares, and will that impact the stock or value of the stock? And I don't know. I don't know. But I saw the judgment. I looked at the history. I saw that he had at least it appeared that he had a significant ownership interest in the company. And I thought it was at least worth bringing up so that somebody could address and could tell all shareholders that it's no problem, that all is well, and there's nothing going on, and the government can't take his shares, and there's no concern. I would assume that the CEO or whoever or council can look into that and could reassure all shareholders so they know one way or the other. And that's my only interest. Again, I have no idea, not involved in the stock anymore. Just I know the conviction, I know what the judgment was, and I know that he's an owner of, or apparently an owner of 4 million shares. And I wouldn't want shareholders to be impacted negatively by that. So I would just ask the CEO to clarify the issue about the ownership of the shares. If there's any concern about those being having to be sold, and make sure there's no involvement in terms of management by a party who might have a problem participating in the future. So just bring this to your attention. Everybody do your own due diligence, but don't be afraid, really, because it will teach you and provide you a lot of information. Don't be afraid to ask the CEO difficult questions, because whether the questions are difficult or not, if the CEO should have answers to those questions. And if he doesn't have the answers, then he should be able to find the answers for you. And he should be able to say there's no problem. And if he says there's no problem, then great. And if there is a problem, then that should be taken care of. I have no idea one way or the other than just being concerned about this one particular shareholder's ownership interest and the judgment that the government got against him. I don't think it has, by the way, I don't think, and I'm just to be clear, I don't think anything that I said relates to anything he's done with regard to Fingermotion. I'm just talking about what the potential impact could be on Fingermotion if the government went after his shares or anything like that. So that was my only concern, just to clarify it. So I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but if I were there, I would certainly ask Mr. Chen to explain, to make me feel that everything is secure, and to go from there. And again, Mr. Chen seems like a very honest gentleman. I presume he would answer those questions directly, and hopefully it's not an issue. Perhaps not an issue, but I didn't want to let this just sit and time pass and something happened and intervention could have occurred in the meantime. Kind of learned that from GTII, where time passed, and years ago, if people would have intervened, a lot of the stuff that went on could have been prevented. I am not saying, by the way, that Fingermotion is GTII. I'm just saying that all investors need to act with a more critical eye and ask tougher questions and not rely upon what they are told. You need to take responsibility for your own position, and you can do it in a nice way, but ask pointed questions and get direct answers. And if you don't get direct answers, take that and use that information. So in other words, if you ask questions to somebody and they give you BS answers, use the fact they're giving BS answers to make a judgment about that. And if they're being forthright and being direct, use that too. So again, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but if I were in this position, I would contact Mr. Chen. I would ask him about this particular investor. I would say, is this a problem? Do we have concern about the shares he owns? Does he have influence on management? I guess those were the questions I would ask. And then I would rely upon him to give me answers. Again, he seems like an honest and a good guy, Mr. Chen. So I assume that would deal with it. But don't let it sit, and get answers. Get answers now so you know, and don't act in the blind. Anyway, hope everybody is well. This is not meant to alarm anybody. This is just to give information for people to use to do further due diligence, because we probably as retail don't do enough due diligence about everything, including and I'm not talking about Mr. Chen in this case, but I think we let management get away way too much. And I think CEOs have to be watched much more carefully as to what they do in general. This happens to be about a shareholder, but anyway, I'm going to stop babbling on. Anyway, thank you for anybody watching. If you have questions, comments, please put it in the stream. Again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, just what I saw. Do your own do your own inspection analysis, but don't be in the blind. That's the most important thing. Everybody be well, take care, have a great day. If I hear anything more about this, I'll let you know. Talk to you later. And thank you very much.